Hey everybody, Lonnie here. So we're continuing with the video series on From Backyard to Browser, my weather application that I created against OSIsoft's OCS Cloud Services. This is going to be taking the weather data in part 2 that we pulled in from my weather station, and we're going to write that to OCS. So we're just going to continue building this application. We're going to get our connection to OCS going. Looking at the architecture, we're now working on getting this section here from this collector sent to OCS. So this will be the first time that we're working with OCS, so we're going to have to set up some things this first time around that we'll be using throughout the project. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to OSIsoft Cloud Services portal, the OCS portal, and I want to come over to namespaces here. So the namespaces are what we're gonna, like I said, this is they call it a logical separation for your infrastructure assets. So anything, all your resources, in this case, we're going to be creating these types and streams. They're all going to reside under a namespace. So to add a namespace, you just come over here, you type in the name of your namespace, the description, what region you want to deploy it to, and then you're off and going. Pretty simple. I'm not going to create this because I already have created one ahead of time that I've been using. So we're going to just use that namespace. But if I were to create it, it's going to take a couple minutes, not that long, and then you get a notification that your namespace is ready to go. So here, the namespace that we're using is Atmo, and if I want to display details, we can see here that we have this account ID, and we'll be using that when we're making our connection. But otherwise, that's about it for namespaces. Not too overly exciting. But now we're going to get into our sequential data store here. The sequential data store, we have our namespace listed. We have our types listed, which we haven't created any types yet, so there's none in there. Same way with streams, we have no streams. So we have an empty namespace or a sequential data store under our namespace Atmo. But we do need to get a client set up. That'll be our starting point. So I'm going to come over to clients, and I'm going to add a new client. So we'll call this Atmo demo, and I'll give it account administrator just so that we're going to have privileges to read and write. We won't have any issues with that for this demo purposes. Usually what I do is I'll start out with that kind of permissions, the God permissions as they're sometimes referred to, where you can do anything and everything, and then I'll slowly start locking it down and checking my application once I have it kind of working and I've got my first connection established. But for this application, we're just going to keep it fully checked with the account administrator. I'll go ahead and continue. Here we're going to add a secret. The secret we're going to use for making our connection, our application, our collector to connect to to OCS. So I'll just call this Atmo, and we'll have it never expire. And now we're going to get this client ID and this client secret. We need to make sure that we copy off this client secret at this point, because this is the only time it's going to be displayed. If for some reason you forgot to do that, or you lost your client secret, you can always just create a new one and copy that one. So go ahead and copy that. Bring it back to my my application here. Let me get my application on the right screen. Okay, here we go. We're going to have this in our weather station collector. Go ahead and put our client secret right up here for now. We'll come back to that in a second. Okay, let's come back to the portal. We'll go ahead and close that. The client ID will be available. We won't need to copy that over. So here's our Atmo. Here's our Atmo demo account that we just created. This will be that service account, and we're going to use this to make our connections to send data and read data from our services that we're writing. All right, up here you can see that we have details about the client ID, the account ID. That's created from the namespace, and then we also have code examples here, and this is very handy. So I'm going to take this entire code example and copy it over into my application, because we'll be using most of it at the top. Okay, so we have this using OSIsoft data. So That is, OSIsoft has provided a .NET Core library that that wraps the HTTP requests to OCS. OCS, you can access OCS using raw HTTP requests. So you can make GET and POST requests to the endpoints, or if you're using C#, you can bring in this library that will kind of wrap things around and make everything strongly typed and just generally easier to use if you're in this environment, which we are. So we're going to go ahead and take advantage of that library. I'm going to bring that in. We want to go to manage our NuGet packages here, and I want to look at browse. And the one thing that we're going to need, this Newtonsoft. We're going to need the latest version of this. I think what we need is the version 12.02 is required to work with the current release of the OCS client. So I'm going to go ahead and install that, and that'll just upgrade. And then I want to make sure I check pre-releases here and type in OSIsoft. And that will bring up the OSIsoft clients. And this is, we'll go ahead and install that. You should see this box. If you're not seeing this box and it doesn't install, then go ahead and check and make sure that you have that Newtonsoft version 12 in your project. I found that that's what happens if you don't have that. Okay, so we're still going to have errors because we need to fix all the stuff going on in our collection. Okay, so in our collector, I'm going to go ahead and resolve these items, and so what we need to do here is we need to bring in this client secret. This is where we're going to use that. Okay, I want to make all these private static. And go ahead and clean this up. We need to go ahead and get our namespace set correctly here, and also we need to set this up as HTTPS. Now this metadata and data service are the two objects that we're going to be using to access OCS. And you can see this this call here, this example stream call is using the metadata service. So we'll go ahead and let's come down here and let's just make sure that this is working for us. And then we'll go ahead and start working on our getting our type and stream created. And then we can finally write the data. All right, so we're just doing a synchronous call here by getting this awaiter. F10, and we didn't have any errors, and we have no streams, which makes sense because we have nothing in our database right now. So that's perfect. So we are able to connect. And all right, so what I'd like to do here is set up another class, and this will be private, static, and this is also going to be async. So we'll make it a task, and I'm just going to return a Boolean for true false because we're really not going to. This is going to write the data. So we'll call this write data, and we'll call this async. We're going to need to definitely pass some things in here at some point. So we know that we have we're going to make this call, and this will be an await because we are now in a and we don't don't need to do the get. We're going to do that. Get streams async. Also, I want to put this in a try-catch block. Okay. We're going to return, we'll just return true. Okay, let's come back to our cloud services here, and I want to come over to the, and there's a sequential data store. There's this quick start. And we can see that we've got the namespace, we've acquired a client identity and secret, we've acquired authorization token, which we don't have to do here. And we're going to create this data type. This is what we're going to get into next. So here you can see there's some code right here that is showing this class. And then we're creating a type. So this is a good sample code that we can start with. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that and come back. We can let's put that right here. And let's go ahead and copy it, comment all that out. Take a look at that. Okay, so we can see there's this class called simple, and there's this SDS member attribute that's attached to this property. This is how we define a type. And so then you can see this type simple here is we're using this SDS type builder, create an SDS type, and we're passing in this class definition in here. And then we're giving an ID, a name, a description, and then we're calling create. That's how we end up creating a type. So what we need to do here is we need to basically get this set up for our weather station. And I'll show you how that works. So I'm going to come over here, add a new folder. We're going to call this our model. And in here, we'll create a new class. And the new class will be called weather station. Add that, and inside this class, let's get rid of the namespace. Inside this class, we're going to do something very similar to what we have here. We need to annotate date and time with this SDS member attribute. So I'm going to go ahead and resolve that using bringing in the OSIsoft data. This isKey is saying that, and I don't want an order here. I'm just going to put the true isKey. So this is saying that the time method is going to be indexed. It's like the primary index on this type. And we need to always have at least one indexable value. And so by setting that up, then now that will be indexable. We're not going to have a state. And then there's a double here for measurement. But what I want to do, I'm going to use the native double here. And we want to set this up as like a temperature. And I also want to make sure, I want to make this a nullable type so that in case we don't get back that value when we're reading our weather station, because we're going to read multiple values, I want to still be able to write data and just write and have that a nullable value. So I'm going to make that nullable. And the other thing too that we need to do is we need to identify this with the UOM. So the UOM is similar to this, except we're going to just use a different property with that attribute. And we'll come down here and we'll just we'll go SDS member, and we're just going to use UOM, and we'll equal this is going to equal some unit of measure, and we know this is looking up ambient weather. The temperature that comes back is degrees Fahrenheit. So one of the things that I want to make sure that we need to look at the UOMs that are available here and see what how we're going to declare that that unit of measure. So here's the unit of measures under the sequential data store documentation. And coming down here, there is a list of the unit of measures that are available. These are quantities, supported unit of measures, and there's a lot of them. All the normal ones that you would want, but in order to declare that with that attribute property, we need to make sure we have the proper spelling here. So this is degrees Fahrenheit, and this is the abbreviation. So we'll go ahead and bring that in, and we'll make sure that we have that set up right. So so we have our date time as a time, and we have our temperature. Now, if we come back and look at our weather station data that we made the call to, here's the data, and we can see that we have the date here. That's this one. And so if we go here, we know this is equivalent to the date, and then we have our this is the indoor temperature right here, temp F. Right here. And the other one that I want to bring is I want to bring my, that's the outdoor temperature. I want to bring the indoor temperature too. So we'll call this temperature indoor. And looking at that, we have our, this is called temp in F right here. So we'll just make that here, temp in F. And I also want to make sure we use the same unit of measure there. Okay. And let's make this public. All right, so now the weather station is ready to use. Just like in that example, we're using that simple class. Now we're using this weather station class. And if we come back here to the collector, you can see that they have this code right here. Let's go ahead and uncomment this code. Okay, coming back and looking at this code. This code's kind of what we want, but not totally. We do need to set this create type, but the rest of this will look quite a bit different. So let's go ahead and get a reference for this SDS type builder. That's using this reflection class. But we're going to want to pass in the weather station class that we've created now, and it has those attributes set up with SDS members, so it's going to be properly defined in OCS. And then I'm just going to call this type. Now I do need to set up a type ID, and so instead of doing it this way, I'm going to come in and make the type ID equal to the type.name. And then the type.name will end up being called weather station, just whatever the name of that class is. And then finally, we want to use that, we want to do an await, and we want to use that metadata service that we have. And we want to do get or create type async, and we want to pass in that type. That will create it. Okay, so the other thing too is we're searching for streams here, and we need to search for the specific stream that we're actually, we're looking for a stream for the weather station. So we can pass in an ID here, and this ID will then just return the strings based off of if they contain whatever that ID is here. So let's pass that in here, and with the ID, so this will be the name of the stream that we're looking for, and if we don't find it, then we need to go ahead and we need to start thinking about creating a type and creating the stream. So let's go ahead and say if well, actually before we do that, because this can return a list of streams and we're only looking for one stream, so let's go ahead and just get the first one on that list. So I'll go ahead and say stream equals streams, and I want to do a first or default here, but the first or default is actually part of the link class library, so we don't have that. But it would look like that, so I'm going to go ahead and resolve that. And here you can see we have system.link, and what that's going to do is that's going to grab the first stream in this collection, and if there is nothing in the collection, then this is going to be null. And so here we can just say if stream is equal to null, then we're going to start creating this type. All right, so this creates the type, but we still don't have a stream yet. Once we have our type defined, either by getting or creating it, then we can go ahead and use that type and build a stream off of it. So how that works is we can take our stream and we're going to make a new stream, new SDS stream, and we can define some properties on that. So we have an ID, and we'll make that equal to whatever the ID is that we passed in, the stream name that we're looking for here. And the name, I also just will set that to the ID, and then the type ID is the other thing we need to define to tell it what type this is going to be. We know we have a type now because we did this operation, so we can safely say that this is going to be equal to the type ID. And then finally, let's go ahead and set up a description. And the description will be called, this is going to be snapshot values. Snapshot values, so this will define the stream. And then finally, we can call an await method here. And this will, and we're also going to use the metadata service. And we're just going to do a create or update stream async, and we'll pass in the stream that we just defined. Okay, now this will come out. Let's see, we still have one problem here. Put a semicolon. Okay, so now the stream, the last thing we need to do is we need to write our data right here. And we don't have data yet. Actually, we've just created this weather station class, but we haven't set up any data, and we haven't created an instance of weather station and populated with that data that we've gotten back from our weather station. Okay, let's go ahead and go to our weather station, our ambient weather station class, and create a new function. And this is going to be our convert function. So we'll take this the J object that we've gotten back, and we'll convert that to that strongly typed weather station class here. So this will be a public static weather station is what I want to return, and we'll call this convert, and we're going to pass in a J object, and we'll call this our data. So let's go ahead and create an instance of a weather station object. And I want to go ahead and grab the values that we're going to be working with in that J object. Let's go ahead and bring in the reference for Newtonsoft there. Okay. So the values, we're going to work on our data, which we know is a J object, and then we can grab the property that's associated, the property that we're looking for. And coming back here, this is last data. So here's the J object that we're working with, and then we have MAC address, last data, and info. This is the one we're going to want. So we'll grab our last data, and it's pretty simple to do. It's in referenced in the array there, the collection. Now this, the only problem is this is going to be a J token, but I want to make it a J object, so I continue doing work with it as a J object. So we can safely cast that to J object. Okay, now we can take our weather station. I can take that time, and the time is going to be equal to, it's going to be our values, and we're going to be working with, the object is called date right here, right? So we're going to do that. So that's going to return a string, so we need to parse that. So we'll use date time parse function, and we'll pass in this this date method, and then the other thing we want to grab the value, and we want to cast that to a string. We're expecting it to be a string. So by doing that, we will get the string for this date field, and then we'll parse it. Now we want to go ahead and grab our temperature, and we want to do something similar here. We're going to take our values, and we want to, in this case, we know that this is called temp F, right? Temp F, and we want to grab that as a double. And then the other thing we need to do is our temperature indoor, and this is going to be temp INF. And so now we have all of our 3 values populated here in our weather station. Now we could do more values because you can see there's a lot more data coming back from the weather station, but I'm just doing these 3 as an example. This is all we're going to use in our application, in that front-end application that I showed you in the first part. So there's no reason to do all of the data, but if I was doing this in real life, I would bring in all that data because I might want to use it for some other purpose in the future. But just to keep this video short, I'm only doing these 3 properties. And then finally, let's just go ahead and return this weather station. Okay, so this will now give us this ability to convert our J object to our strongly typed weather station. So coming back here at the top, after we get our data here, let's go ahead and station type. Okay, so we can take weather station data is going to equal, and then we're going to call our ambient weather, and we're going to do a convert. Convert, and we'll pass in the data, and that's going to return the weather station strongly typed. And now we can go ahead and we can write our data. So write data to OCS, and here we can go, and we're going to call the this is going to be write data async. We know we need to pass in a string ID, and I think what I want to call my string is I'm going to use the location Napa, and the weather station name is called Pluto, and we'll call this snapshot. Make sure that I want to call on the results. I don't want to call on the task. So now we'll have the results will be true or false here. But we're not passing in our data yet, so we know we need our data to come in because otherwise it's not going to get in the database. And so here, let's go ahead and this is going to be weather station. And we'll call this data. And finally, the last thing we need to do is just complete this write. And we know we had our stream set up. So just to make sure that everything is good, I'm going to go ahead and put this, as long as our stream does not equal null, just to be safe, make sure everything's been created like we expect it to. Now we can go ahead and do our write. And this will just be in a wait function, and then we're going to call the data service this time, and we're going to call update value. Let's see, update value async, because we're only updating a single value. Now this takes a type, just similar how we had this create SDS type up here. This is expecting a type here, and we're going to make it that type weather station. And then we just pass in the stream ID, whatever our stream ID is. And let's do stream. Let's pass in our stream ID here, and then we'll pass in the data. Okay, so and then finally we're going to return if everything's successful. If not, we're going to throw an error. Okay. So let's go ahead and see how all this works. Make sure our convert function works okay, and then we want to make sure our write data function works okay. Okay, I know this is a lot as we're getting going here, but you know, as we step through it, I think you'll see how all this is going to work if you weren't quite following me. All right, so here's our data that we've come back from the weather station. We're going to call the convert function. So let's step into that and make sure that that's working. Creating a new weather station, grabbing that last data object, the time, 8:19 p.m. That's the UTC time, so that's right. The temperature, 75.6. The indoor temperature, 69.6. That looks great. So now we'll come out and we're going to come over and we're going to step into this write data. Now we don't expect that we're going to have a stream. So we'll come in and we can see our stream ID is called napa.pluto snapshot, and we have our data here. We have our weather station converted data. You can see these three items, right? Okay. So now we're going to get the stream async, which we're passing in that stream ID. Now we don't expect anything to come back because we haven't created anything yet. So we're going to get the first or default, but there's nothing in the list. So just like we're expecting with this first or default, this is going to end up being null. And this is that first pass. So now the stream's null. We can come in here and we can create this type based on the weather station object, or weather station class definition. So this hasn't done anything on OCS yet. This is just getting everything configured. The name is called weather station based on the class name. I'm just going to set the ID to that because otherwise it'll be this GUID, and I don't want it to be a GUID. So here's the ID and here's the name. And then now this will actually create the type in OCS when we make this call if we've done everything correct. And we didn't throw an error, so that's good news. Let's come back to the browser. Let's look at, I'm going to come over to our sequential data store, and we're under the Atmo namespace. So now you can see we have a type here called weather station. If I check that type and I view it, we can see there's a time, there's a temperature, and there's a temperature indoor, and you can see the date time. The time is set up to be a key, and these are nullable doubles, just like how we defined it. So you can see through code, using those attribute annotations, and setting the proper properties on those, we're able to get this configured correctly. That's the secret. Okay, now streams. We know we don't have any streams created yet, although we do have our type. So let's see if our stream gets created as we step through this code. So here we're defining the stream, napa.pluto.snapshot, and the type ID, weather station, and then we have our description. So I'll go ahead and we're going to call this creator update stream. And once again, we didn't throw any errors, so we know that we assume that works. Let's go ahead and I'm going to click off that, come back to streams, and we can see now that there definitely is a stream that's been created. Okay, that looks good. Let's come back to do the last thing, see if we can actually write some data. This is super exciting. So the data that we're going to be writing in, so we're calling the data service, and we're going to do an update, passing in that stream ID. Okay, once again, we did not throw any errors. So let's come back to our stream here, and I'm going to click this stream, and I have this data that appears down here, and I can click on that, and I can see that our data now is actually in, we're seeing the last event that was written, but we can see we actually have data in here. So we were successful. That is really, really cool. Okay. And so we'll go ahead and stop this now. And I hope you're able to follow along here. So we've created this type, we've created the stream, we've written data, and we've made a successful connection. So we really got a lot accomplished here as far as getting the data into our data store. Now the nice thing is we're going to move into our forecasting service next, and it'll go really pretty fast. It's going to be the same thing, except we're going to be pulling in forecast data, and we're going to get a little bit more complicated because we're actually going to use two different types, not just a single type. So you'll see a slightly more complicated example but we're going to be able to reuse a lot of this code, what we've done here, so it's going to go pretty fast. All right, so my name's Lonnie. I hope that you're following along, and stay tuned for this will be part 4 of the series. This is part 3, and part 4 will be writing our getting our forecast data and writing that into OCS. Thanks, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.